Hey guys, Amber here with Fieldcraft Survival, and today we're sitting down with Josh Naas from Ham Radio Crash Course. You can find him on YouTube. Do you have other channels?
It's Ham Radio Crash Course all over the internet, but you know, we got the TikToks now and the Instagrams.
You're on you
we got
are
a
so
Discord,
modern.
Discord, yeah, all the things, yeah.
Find him everywhere at Ham Radio Crash Course. So I'm really excited to talk to Josh today because we're going to focus on the family aspect of communication. Communication is so integral and so crucial when it comes to your family preparedness.
Absolutely.
And I think it's something that people skip over a lot just because it requires some expertise and some understanding.
It can be. It can be a little daunting to get started
Right.
with it. I think people see things like license requirements, taking tests, and they think, maybe not be worth it, or maybe they just don't know all the capabilities available that would make spending a couple of days studying not that big a deal.
Absolutely. And also, not to sound rude, but we've gotten complacent in many areas of the country, maybe areas that aren't prone to certain types of natural disasters where they haven't necessarily lost infrastructure like we do in the South with hurricanes.
Well, just look at Texas, right?
Absolutely.
Just recently, right? Yeah.
Their eyes got opened pretty wide. And so we rely on our cell phones because they're incredible and technologies come so far and they can do amazing things, but we don't often think about what we need to do on the back end to really beef up our PACE plan. And if you've never heard me talk about a PACE plan, or you've never heard anybody here talk about a PACE plan before, it's a military acronym that stands for primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency. And what it does is it sets you up with different levels of security depending on what you're talking about. And today that's communication.
Right.
So our cell phones would be primary.
Sure.
We're using that to communicate as long as we have service.
Right.
And then we're also using that to navigate many times.
Yeah, because you can use the GPS without service, right? The phone receiver for GPS is not tied to the network generally.
Right. But after that, we don't often see people having a really good outlined alternate, contingency, emergency, and so forth and so on.
I think one of the major parts of the PACE plan is that it's actually supposed to be 3 or 4 separate things, right? It's not supposed to be just, I use this radio for 3 out of the 4. It doesn't work that way, right? So you'd have your cell phone as your primary. You could have your alternate as, a cheap over-the-counter Walmart blister pack family radio service radio.
Walkie-talkies.
Right, like a 1 watt, it could be Spider-Man for, those branded ones, right? Those work fine, like on your block.
Yeah.
You can hand them to your kids. Kids can get trained on how to use a radio just by having something that's off the shelf like that. You can hand these to elderly neighbors if the comms go down. You have a neighbor, let's say they're on oxygen tanks. Let's say they need a generator to keep insulin cold.
Yeah.
Those would be the right people to give some form of comms to, right?
I love that, thinking about community.
Right. So you hand them a cheap, inexpensive radio, and then your job may then be to interoperate, right? So maybe you have your ham radio license, which allows you a more powerful radio, probably a better antenna. That's where you may be able to phone for help, first responders, other hams on behalf of your local neighbor, right?
Love that.
So that's kind of an alternate right there, just a cheap over-the-counter. Next layer would probably be like GMRS. That is one step up from FRS radios, usually 5-watt output radios, again, in the handy-talkie format.
Explain to them what these acronyms mean.
Sure, good. Family Radio Service is a service.
And that's your FRS.
FRS, right. And these are FCC services. These are identified by the FCC. They have their own rules associated to them, so they are separate from ham radio. Citizens band, civilian band, CB radio falls into this as well.
No licensure required.
No licenses for CB.
The
or
FCC
FRS.
is a regulating body.
Correct. For the US. Other countries have their own versions of that. GMRS is the larger version, more powerful version of FRS.
Okay.
Same concept, more power. So that stands for General Mobile Radio Service.
Okay.
A little bit bigger radios, not by size, but by power. That requires a license though.
Okay.
$75 right now. However, that is changing. It's going to go down to $35. That allows you to cover your whole family with your GMRS license. So you, your husband, significant other, children, and your parents technically would fall under that umbrella license, and it's good for 10 years. So with that radio or a mobile radio that also falls within the GMRS space, which would be 50 watts output, you could interoperate with FRS frequencies that's local in your neighborhood and use that to talk to maybe a repeater that's on a mountain. There are GMRS repeaters.
So you're just building.
Right. You're just kind of going, how deep down the rabbit hole do you want to go?
You're getting better frequencies.
It's more power in this case.
More power.
So FRS and GMRS are kind of in the same frequency space. They're
Okay.
part of the ultra high frequency UHF radio space, which is line of sight comms, meaning you got a bunch of buildings in the way, they're going to absorb the RF. Bunch of trees, dense forests, it may absorb the RF.
The radio frequencies.
Radio frequencies. So yeah, you might need to have an antenna up on the roof. Maybe not this case of a small radio, but like a mobile radio. And that would get you out to talk to neighborhoods, across town, that kind of thing.
And so with this would be your ham radio.
These are all ham radios on the table.
And you can extend your antenna.
Yes. So here's a case in point. This is a accessory antenna made by a third party. This is actually handmade in Utah. With FRS, those antennas are fixed. You cannot modify them.
Okay.
With GMRS, though, you can. You can swap out GMRS antennas, and that's part of the licensing system.
And so actually in our PACE plan for my children, I would say we bump them up because they don't have cell phones. They're too little for that in my regard. And so their primary is the walkie-talkie or the family radio service.
Yeah, and again, that's great. It's not an emergency all the time. Kids love walkie-talkies,
Right.
and they're just playing around with it. It builds knowledge.
And you're
how to
teaching
use
them
radio.
the value of communication. They're desiring that, trying to seek ways to make sure that they're staying connected so that they can communicate back and forth to me. And so it's a good instilling of the values of communication.
100%. I mean, kids love it. They're cheap. They run off of AA batteries, so you can have just a simple solar panel often to charge them up anyway if it was an emergency, or run off of a generator with an inverter. So you've got all kinds of redundancy in addition to your PACE plan, right?
Yeah.
So
would you consider your E a satellite phone?
no, not necessarily, for a couple of reasons. That is an option. I think sometimes when people see the cost of a satellite phone, it can be very expensive. There are some systems like Inmarsat that has actual rollover minutes that are associated with their monthly plan, which is really nice. Going back to the old cell phone days. Of the
I've
90s
actually
when you
even
rollover
had
minutes.
conversations with companies who will give you a certain amount of minutes for a year.
Oh, okay.
And they will roll them over into the next year.
Oh,
also,
that's
if you
nice.
don't use them all, and so you're paying for that just a yearly fee, which they can subdivide into months.
Right.
So you're spending like $580 for a phone, then you're spending about $540 a year for this service plan. So that's about $1,000 a year.
Yeah, and nobody get me. Don't confuse what I'm saying. It's a totally respectable emergency level of a PACE plan. I just have many different radios available to me.
Yeah.
So in this case, the one that's right here actually allows for beyond line of sight communication.
Okay.
Whereas the radios we talked about earlier are line of sight. The RF is going to just shoot through the atmosphere and keep going. This radio's RF will refract off the atmosphere, which is bounce.
Yeah.
And so you can talk to other continents, other countries with a radio like this.
Awesome.
It's not really as convenient as a sat phone.
Right.
I totally appreciate that. But the concern that I have, and this is something everybody should consider, when you have like a hurricane, or in my case, earthquakes or wildfires, those are kind of localized emergencies. Your goal is to really kind of like get your comms out to the internet where the rest of your family is and say, hey, we're fine, we're okay, don't worry. Satellite phones are good at that. If you had anything that was wider spread, then you may have a problem, right? And then you'd have to go satellite phone to satellite phone. Maybe cell phones are.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Texas is a pretty big state, and if they've got comms out completely,
Right.
you're trying to use your sat phone to talk to somebody that's on the other side of Texas, and they've got comms issues, so you may not even be able to reach them.
Right.
But ham radio will always, generally, you can find a solution to reach whatever your need is, and if you're going one-to-one in that case.
Now, what if you're in a very remote area?
Doesn't matter. The only problem you would face is if you're in like a deep valley. If you get up to a higher level, or if you're just really shooting your RF straight up and back down. So there's an antenna system that does that. That would give you like 400-mile coverage.
Okay.
Right? Something like this would do that. This is kind of getting into the weeds a little bit, but you do have options with ham radio. That's part of the reasons why the licensing system is more based off of the operator's knowledge, because the operator can basically take this and explore many different aspects of the hobby to accomplish different PACE goals, for instance, or hobby goals, emergency preparedness goals.
Yeah. And there's different levels.
Yes.
With your ham radio license.
There are 3 license levels. There's technician, general, and extra. They all require a multiple choice test. Passing is 74% or higher.
Nice. And it comes from the same question pool every time, right? Pretty
much. So the technician has a question pool. It changes every 4 years, I think. And there are 35 questions that are pulled off of that. General has a similar setup. Extra, though, has 500 questions, and there's like 45 questions or 50 questions in the test.
Yeah, I even
Extra is
have
the top hardest one.
I have a book that I bought from Amazon that has every question in it that you just review.
Yeah, there's a website, too, that I like. It's called hamstudy.org. It's free, and it actually tracks your testing progress.
Nice.
So you take practice tests, and it'll tell you the sections of the book that you're failing at. What's that?
I have the app.
Oh, great. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, that's really nice before you go to bed. Nothing will put you to sleep faster than taking a ham radio test. So do a couple practice tests. It shows you really quick where you're lacking in, and then you can study those questions, get a little bit better in whatever area you're lacking.
I love it. So while I have you here and we're talking communication, let's go super primitive with our kids, because people may be thinking, I can't send my 6-year-old to the park or ahead of me on a trail with a ham radio necessarily.
Sure.
Or give him an Inmarsat satellite phone. Like, go have fun, buddy.
Yeah, here you go.
That's what you're going to do. And so what I do with my children is I'm using simple tools like whistles. We love whistles. I have one right here. I attach it to the straps on their backpack so that they can just pull their strap a little closer to their face, grab their whistle, and signal to me. And we can create codes with those whistles.
The code already exists. It's called Morse code.
Morse code, I know. I should just implement that. What have I been thinking?
I mean, SOS, of course, right? Everybody knows that. But yeah, I mean, it's the same concept, DITs and DAWs.
Yeah.
You could still do that. Kids love Morse code. It's like a code that the parents don't know.
Yeah.
So we found that it's not all the cool like internet-enabled radios like this guy, or the cool digital modes like where we can chat computer to computer via radio, which is really handy in an emergency. It's like old school Morse code. Like kids are seeing that and they're like, oh man, Dad and Mom don't know anything about this.
Kids are incredible learners.
Oh yeah,
at
particularly for languages. And Morse code is basically a combination of both like a spoken language kind of, and it's a musical language in the sense that everything is generally pattern based, like the way the characters are keyed.
All right, we're doing it. We're going to learn Morse code.
There you go. It's that easy.
Got our
just add that to the list, right?
Our lesson plan for next year. So I love that. I also love teaching them to speak, to communicate to people. So if they would get displaced from me at a young age, to teach them what my full name is, what my phone number is, and how to communicate that to adults. Because kids are seeing everything at waist level.
Yes.
You know, so teaching them the steps about how to communicate. I'm going to go find an adult, tug on them, tell them, you know, I need to find my mom. This is her name. This is her phone number. Can you call her? I also keep identification cards in their backpack, and they know if they were to get lost, they could pull those out. And they're laminated, and they have multiple phone numbers on there and any medical considerations they may have if your child has allergies or diabetes or something like that.
The number thing is really important that they can remember. At least, you know, mom or dad's number is huge. That's kind of like a little mini PACE plan for them, really.
Absolutely. And normally at about 4 years old, if you're diligent with it, they can memorize a phone number.
Sure.
Yeah. And they're very good with steps. And it alleviates a lot of anxiety. So like I was going through the airport to come here with 3 children by myself. And we went over this concept before. If you get separated from mom, what do you do? And they told me exactly what they were going to do. And I say to find a mom. I don't say like find a security guard or anything like that. Find a mom.
Find a mom.
Because normally a mom's not going to like pass you off to security and say she's
not
lost.
My problem.
A mom's like, I am involved until we find your mom. You know? I'm here for it.
Right.
So they walked through the steps, and rather than feeling fear about being in such a public place with so much activity happening, they knew exactly what they'd do if they got lost, and it eliminates so much fear.
This exact thing happened to my wife and I's son at an amusement park. He was in one of those climby ball pit contraptions, really big one, multi-story.
Where you can't see them.
Can't see them.
It's the worst.
And it was actually like 4 or 5 kids together. They were all friends. And my oldest came out, and I don't know how he came out the wrong exit. Because those things always have like 4 exits.
Yeah.
And sure enough, found a mom, said, I don't know where my mom is. Here is my mom's cell phone number.
I love that.
Boom. And that was...
Problem solved.
He saved his own day.
He did.
Which is very important.
Absolutely. So love that. And then also, I keep Write and Rain notebooks
I do too.
in their backpack.
Oh, even better. Yeah. For the
And
kids.
so with a writing tool, I love pencils just because they could sharpen it with their little knives if they had to. You know what I mean? Like a pen's
absolutely.
going to run out of ink eventually.
Right.
So,
Yep.
and they could write if it would get wet. And so Write in the Rain absorbs only ink. It doesn't absorb moisture.
From my experience, yes.
Yeah, that's what it's supposed to be able to do. So
Right.
it doesn't get inflated when it gets full of water, so they can be in any of the elements. And so I keep writing tools with them. I keep ink pens. I do keep pencils just in case they'd have to whittle it down as a backup. But that way they could take notes of things if they needed, their location or signs, what terminal they're even in, like writing things down or where they
take
needed
pictures
to go.
of what streets they passed.
Right.
Heck, even leaving notes as they're walking,
Absolutely.
like little drops.
Yes. So it's primitive, but I find it so valuable and so important.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else you'd add to that for
I mean,
children?
there really is a ton of stuff.
For sure.
Like we're trying to give a high level kind of information blast. Really, if you think about anything, you would have two-way communication, text messages, emails, voice comms. We can facilitate that with amateur radio. Not so much with the GMRS and the FRS. They kind of top out at talking. But, I can relay literal text messages to my wife's phone via this radio when I'm out of cell phone range.
Yeah.
I can send emails with this radio when I'm outside of internet range. So it all exists. It's just like it's a couple layers down in terms of how you access that. This one's a little bit easier. This is just an all-in-one boxed radio. We talked about the last time I was out at Fieldcraft. We talked about this radio and the one that came before it. And this will do pretty much all of your beaconing information when you're out hiking. So it'll take the GPS signal in, and it will give you your heading, speed, and elevation. And if another radio picks this up that has connection to the internet, like again outside of a disaster area, because it'll hop, it'll actually upload that information to a website. So anyone that was maybe tracking your progress while you were on a hike will know exactly where you're at in case you get into trouble.
That's
or
amazing.
you miss your call-in time. That they know where to go look for you, at least get the ball rolling.
So if people see the value in this, which I think this would be the ultimate answer to beef up your family's security plan. Takes a little bit of time and effort,
Yeah.
but you offer instruction on it, don't you?
Yeah, I live stream every Saturday at 5 p.m. and I post videos throughout the week. I had Mike on my show. We did an interview with him, and that's when he introduced me to the PACE plan.
Oh, okay.
And I dove hard into that. I did
Nice.
a whole nother series of live streams just on breaking down multiple levels of PACE plans for multiple comms options.
Yeah,
and that's a little bit more in the weeds. So those are available if people are interested.
If people are like, where do I start?
I have a playlist right at the top of my channel. It says, if you're new to ham radio, click here.
I mean, that's
Yeah,
what
just-
we need. That's
and-
what people need.
And just click on the playlist and click on what you find interesting, right?
Okay.
Don't think that, you've got to use the Josh brand tutorial. If you think something's cool, click on it, because you're probably right. You know you better than I do. So click on what you like, see if you're interested in it. If it kind of sticks or you're with it, then, just keep watching more stuff and think about getting your license.
Yeah. Do you recommend people study through the guide?
I recommend however you learn best is what you pursue.
Okay.
There are audiobooks, there are written books, there are websites, there are apps for taking practice tests. There are my videos. Other people make videos too. However it is that you learn best, ham radio, someone is offering that to help you get your license.
And where do you find the testing facilities, testing sites?
Oh, this is the best part. Even though whatever happened with COVID, one of the best outcomes of that is all the testing is online now.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. Do you have anything else to add?
No, I just love what you guys are doing. I love that we're adding comms into all of this. It's kind of like another leg of the triangle of how to be prepared, what you should be concerned with. I think
Absolutely.
comms are a vital aspect of that.
They are, definitely. We're beefing up our pillars over here.
There you go.
Filling them in. Yeah, thank you so much. So y'all, if you like this content, definitely subscribe below so you can follow along as we drop more family preparedness and preparedness videos in general on YouTube. But we have lots of great content, specifically with ham radio that Josh has done with us, and you can find those videos on our premium locals page, and we have the links to those in the show notes. And Josh talks more specifically to the different aspects of ham radio. Is that right? Can I say ham radio?
Getting started, programming radios, some of the etiquette stuff.
Yeah, that will answer a lot more of your specific questions. So definitely check out the locals page and sign up there for all the value and content that we bring you. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
We hope that was helpful. Bye, guys.
Bye.